Hey there.
Hi. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I just got off the phone with Joel hearing about his lightning.
Oh yeah, yeah. Some bad storms rolled through down that
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. So I just told him, well, I don't know if we're going to end up rescheduling or, what, because Joel's not coming. Randy's
Okay.
not coming. Kim is
Okay.
not sure what time she might be able to get here. Vanita's not sure if she's coming.
Oh.
And I haven't heard anything from Nicole. So I think at best it might be me, you, and Nicole. Um, but I don't know if this is one of those nights when Nicole said she was starting a new job or something.
Oh, that's. I think it was. Was it a class or I think a class, and maybe the time would be overlapping.
Yeah, and I think she said she'd only
Oh.
be with us for like a half hour. So she may
Mm.
not get here until 7:30, you know.
Okay. Well, Michelle, it sounds like it's time for a rescheduling.
I think so.
Not that I don't completely enjoy your company and your thought-provoking commentary, but it'd be much more fun with the rest of us here.
Well, yeah, that is true. There was a time or two though where Randy and I did it, and it was just the two of us, and
Yeah.
it worked out okay. The what pushes me to want to do it is
Mhm.
to keep on schedule. You
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
so that we keep moving toward the end at a real
Well.
break. And every time we stop to reschedule, there's that. But
Yeah.
and with Benita, well, Randy's starting a new job
Oh, she is.
or a second job.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
And so
Mm.
she has some kind of training or meeting related to that tonight.
Mhm.
Um, and I know she said she is going to be able to facilitate next week as she's scheduled
Oh,
to.
yeah.
Um, but I thought she was also saying that the second job is on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I'm not sure yet if she's going to be able to finish the
Mm,
session.
okay.
I think she is because at the same time we were making a date. This was all in writing, and we were
Uh-huh.
making a date for this Friday for me to try to show her how to work the camera.
Okay.
Um, so I think if she were not planning to finish the session, we probably didn't need to do that. We probably don't need to do that this Friday. So I
Yeah.
think she'll be here, but I wasn't really clear from from her comment. But I know she's not coming tonight.
Okay.
Um, Vanita, of course, this weather
Mm.
um, causes her lupus to act up.
Yeah. Yeah.
The humidity.
Hmm.
So we're heading into the humid season.
I know, and it feels early and intense.
Yeah,
I am so not ready.
yeah. So I don't. In fact, can you hear me all right over the
Oh
air
yeah.
conditioning?
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
'cause
Mhm.
it's
You're
such a
fine.
loud air conditioner. So, but I don't really know how much we can count on Benita for the rest of the session. Nicole has a part-time job. Uh, so
Yeah.
I'm,
Okay. Okay.
I'm just, I'm just saying. saying? You know, I also feel like, if we wait until everybody feels good that not having any alternate plans or health challenges, then we might as well say we've done all we can really do with Paula Giddings.
Michelle, you sound like it's a sign from God. Okay.
Well, you know, we have been really seriously challenged this session.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. People got a lot of stuff going on.
But they do, and you know, as I said to y'all before, I don't take it personally, but I do look at. So does that mean we should do something different?
Well, what could that be?
And what could that be? You know, I mean, you know, I have the modified agenda for tonight.
Yeah, which was excellent. I'm like, I was printing it out because I didn't look at it, and I'm like, wait, the printer stopped. I'm like, oh, it's 3 pages.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yes.
You know, so I didn't work too hard to do the agenda. But I don't know. I'm just talking to try to see if anybody else shows up. It's almost 6:45.
Okay.
I definitely think Vanita is not going to come at this point because when she comes, you know, she's usually here by 6:15.
Okay.
So I think she's not coming. So I think at best Kim may show up at some point, and Nicole may show up at some point.
That's so encouraging. At some point.
Oh,
well,
but I'm saying all this to say that really, it seems like the rest of the session could be like this.
I hope not. We at least have 3. We at least have a third person that comes. I think this was just a series of unfortunate incidents right now, tonight.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying to encourage you. And you're like, I see the handwriting on the wall.
You know, I like to ground myself in reality, and it's not always cute. It's not always pretty. You know, I'm pretty horrified actually by some of the comments that I've been seeing about the new movie Roots, with people saying that you know Snoop Dogg came out and said people should not watch it.
Really?
He's yeah, he was saying that it's just the white man's way of beating us down psychologically. So, you know, I could dismiss it because it was Snoop Dogg, and you know, that's what he does.
Well, when did he become a great thinker and symbol of?
Never.
Because I'm still, you know, when you say Snoop Dogg, I'm thinking processed ponytails and gin and juice. Okay, I'm not thinking about civil rights issues and current psychology.
But people are listening to him, Georgette. That's what I'm saying. This is the scary part. And even if they're not saying it because he said it, I have seen a lot of comments today with people expressing that kind of emotion, that we don't need to keep going over this history. It's too painful. I can't watch it. Black people.
Black people saying this?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Joel and I had this conversation when we first saw, the advertisements, and we were like wondering, okay, is this necessary? And
Right.
at first we were like, oh, they're rehashing this. And well, we reminisce about when we first saw Roots come on. We were in grade school, and
Right.
his experience in the South was more serious because he said people went to school and beat up white kids. And I'm like, well, luckily my school was integrated. They didn't do that.
Right.
But it was very eye-opening. And,
Yeah.
all races got a chance to see, wow, was this really the history? And okay, so this is what you went through. And, and even Black urban kids, didn't have a good idea of what had happened,
Right.
because we weren't really being taught unless you were in a school like BYO's youth, educational, some kind of, school, mini school like that. You didn't get that kind of history. Because your parents weren't talking about it because it was traumatic.
Right.
They were trying to get as far away from the event as possible.
Right.
And so then I read a comment John Amos made where he said, Hollywood is devoid of creativity and they're just rehashing it. Well, that may be true, but there's also a good argument to be made that you're employing a lot of actors of color, and the story hasn't been changed. And even though we don't have, Alex Haley, and that was the newness of it, you have a Black author telling his history, which we hadn't had that linkage all the way back to Africa before. And here's this one man who had it, and then encouraged a lot of people, oh, let me find out about my roots. And so to bring it back up in this new venue, gives access to people who probably had that, that negative opinion. Oh, why do we need to, hear about that again? Well, look at Trump. That's the reason why we need to talk about this again, okay? Remind people.
I mean, if we had learned the lesson, then,
right.
then we could stop playing it. But it's like we haven't learned. And so we keep repeating these patterns. So much of what is happening today, the foundation of it is in the slavery era. And so, until we really process that, it's like how I feel about reparations. Let me go see what Nicole is saying. But it's like how I feel about reparations, in that we need to do something to indicate that we have really absorbed the lessons. Like this thing right now about Obama not apologizing in Japan. And the US government never apologizes for anything. But why would it? It ain't sorry about nothing. And it don't plan on stopping, stealing your resources and killing your people. So, when you apologize, it's because a sincere apology is because you really grasp the harm that you inflicted, and you really do feel bad about it, and you really don't want to do it again. But if that's not where you are, then don't apologize. Let me go see what Nicole is saying. I'll be right back.
Okay.
She's trying to get in. I don't. So she's having a problem getting in. I don't know what is going on with these links. The same problem we've had for the last couple of weeks, where two different Hangouts have been.
Okay.
We were almost going to have that problem tonight, except after I opened the Hangout, that's the most recent link that I posted in the group.
Yeah.
And you got in, so I don't know what is going on with Nicole. Let's see. I can't. I don't know, but I feel like I'm gonna have to go through a whole study thing to see. Oh, here she is.
Oh, there she is.
Okay. Goodness. That is such a difficult time.
I feel like I'm gonna have to go through a whole study thing to find out what changes they've made to Google Hangout, because something different is going on. So we were just saying, Nicole, we didn't know what we were gonna do because I think you're probably the last one to join us tonight. Kim may come in later.
Okay.
But the rest of the folks are not going to make it. So, I think we should probably go ahead, Georgette,
Well, 3 is a magic number.
3 is a magic
number. We'll press forward.
But so,
all right.
Nicole,
Sounds
what are you
good to
saying
me.
though about your schedule? Is this like gonna? One of those nights.
Yeah. I'm sure she'll be back.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know what's happening here. Okay, I'm back.
I think. Now you came back to the echo.
Oh, goodness. Okay, let me go out then. Okay, I'll be right back.
Oh, man. So that's what I think, Georgette, that because we don't ever look at it in a serious way as a country, as a government, the issue of slavery, and do something painful like reparations, so that we know that this was wrong and that we don't want to pay that cost ever again, and we really do want to change our behavior, then we're going to keep coming up with new slaveries by another name.
Yeah.
Nicole, I'm talking about, I've been seeing people today really upset about the remake of, and really feeling like we don't need to know this history, that it's just drag. Oh, she's gone again.
Okay. I don't know what's happening here. Okay.
It is one of those nights. But that we don't need to know this history of roots, and that it's just dragging people down, dredging up pain people can't deal with. yada yada. And I've seen a lot of that kind of thing going on today. Between that and the gorilla.
Oh gosh, yeah. Right, right.
I can't take it. So, but Nicole, what are you saying though about your schedule? Did you start your new
No,
job?
it's next week. It's next week, and so my intent is to join for the first 30 minutes, and then my
Oh,
class starts at 6 p.m. Central Time. So it would give me from 5:30 until 6. I would literally have them waiting outside. But yeah, that's my
oh,
intention, definitely to catch the first 30 minutes.
okay. Well, hopefully we can encourage people to, come a few minutes early so we're ready to start at at
Hmm.
on the half hour.
Let me ask you a quick question. So once we finish this book, When and Where I Enter, then what happens? Do we immediately roll into another book or?
No, usually our pattern has been. What has our pattern been? To take
We get
about
a list of
a
books.
month or 6 weeks
Oh,
in,
okay.
yeah, in between books. The only time we didn't take a break that long was when we read the parable of the parable series.
Okay.
Octavia Butler, and
Okay.
we read parable of the sower, and then I think we took a 2 week break and read parable of the talents, something like
Okay.
that.
Okay.
But all
Okay.
other times it's been a longer break, and I'm even thinking we might be ready for even longer than 6 weeks, because the other thing we were talking about before you got here was,
Mhm.
just people have had so much stuff going on this uh, this session. Now Randy has a summer job.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's a summer job or a part-time job. Vanita gets her lupus acts up in
Right.
the warm weather, and we're heading into the warm weather.
Right.
Um, and tonight, Joel had lightning hit his house.
Oh my
So
gosh. Oh my gosh. My thoughts are with them. Wow.
yeah, yeah. So I was just saying to Joel, to Georgette, I really do believe in reading the handwriting on the wall, and
Okay.
which is what led into the discussion on roots. That I like to read the handwriting on the wall, even when it's ugly,
Right.
and
I
even when it's
understand that.
painful,
Right.
but to be grounded in reality enough to make decisions based on
Right.
reality and not the way
So,
that I wish things were,
right. I can understand
you
that.
know. So, but that realism, it can be really pretty ugly and funky sometimes. So,
All right. I understand that.
but since we're here, let's go on and see what we can do in the next hour. And very quickly, I will say welcome everyone to the Global Black Feminist Reading Circle. We are in session 6, scheduled to go through July 19th, reading Paula Giddings, When and Where I Enter, The Impact of Black Women on Race and Sex in America. This is the 2006 version. There's actually a 2007 version, but good luck finding it. I couldn't. Um,
Okay.
um, my name is Michelle Odom, and I am joining you from Brooklyn, New York. And Georgette,
And I'm Georgette Moses, and I'm joining you from Columbia, South Carolina.
welcome, welcome.
Hi, I'm Nicole Jackson Wilson, and I'm joining from Houston, Texas.
All right. So we are tonight discussing two chapters, Chapter 12, Enter Mary McLeod Bethune, and Chapter 13, Black Braintruster, Mary McLeod Bethune and the Roosevelt Administration. So it's all about Mary. Let me go ahead and read the summary.
Okay.
There are a few people who can get a chance to sit down sometimes and talk. I mean, just talk to people so that they can get the tones of your voices and vibrations of your souls at the injustices that are being meted out to us in these several fields, and continue to beg and work until something is done about it. I am actually dying on my feet because I'm giving every moment, almost night and day, every little crevice I can get into, every opportunity I can get to whisper into the ear of an upper official. I am trying to breathe my soul, a spiritual something, into the needs of our people. And that's a quote from Mary McLeod Bethune. Enter Mary Jane McLeod Bethune, born in 1875, died in 1955, an articulate and passionate visionary with ample pride and love for Black people. Mary McLeod Bethune used her skills to secure greater visibility and opportunities for African Americans, women, and youth. Giddings explores the strengths and weaknesses of this powerful woman who, at the age of 61, was simultaneously serving as president of the National Council of Negro Women, the president of Bethune-Cookman College, and as an appointee to the National Youth Administration. By examining what Bethune was able to accomplish through various leadership positions from the 1920s through the 1940s in Chapter 12, Enter Mary McLeod Bethune, and Chapter 13, Black Braintruster, Mary McLeod Bethune and the Roosevelt Administration, we are offered a window to her sources of inspiration, commitment to the race, and style of leadership, with the author concluding, ultimately, because of her efforts, women were counted among the new groups with legitimate demands that had to be taken into account on the national agenda. As a result, Blacks, both men and women, were better prepared to go beyond separate but equal to demand integration into the nation's mainstream. So, of course, I am experimenting with a really simple kind of agenda tonight with no real questions. So let's see how it happens. Does anybody have a passage that they want to talk about, or do you want to pick one of those topics that are listed there? Revolutionary love, work-life balance, leadership and sacrifice, interracialism versus separate but equal, personal influence, FDR's Black Cabinet, cooperation versus competition, national visibility, or Northern fever and the power of the Black vote. All of those are things that to me stood out in these two chapters. So do you want to pick a passage, or do you want to pick a topic and just let's see where we go?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good to me. I actually had a passage, and I'm trying to, let me locate it here. I'm using the online PDF.
Okay.
And so,
what chapter is it?
It's it's Enter Mary McLeod Bethune and 12, chapter 12 there. And so what it just kind of struck me that she and Ida Wells Barnett had both had desire to be president, Bethune and Burnett, and because, as the text says, Bethune was able to help the organization. I guess the prevalent thought was that she was able to help them reach a consensus and wasn't as radical. That then she was kind of the shoo-in candidate. So my question is, I'm thinking about the what ifs. I just wonder what would have been accomplished had Barnett, and not to take anything away from Mary McLeod Bethune, because she is a hero, in my opinion, in her own right. Definitely want to celebrate her and her accomplishments, and celebrating her as a visionary and a Black feminist, and true to raising visibility regarding the plight of black men and more so Black women. But I don't know. I was just stuck on that. That, because it speaks of Barnett as a radical. And so at that time, I'm trying to go back in history, right? I think 1930s and the Great Depression and what's going on with, Blacks in America. And it's kind of ties into when you mentioned roots, this notion that Black people in our historical past in America have been made into slaves. You take men and women and they become enslaved. And so I'm just thinking about what we were becoming in America, post chattel slavery, and then these two women who were vying for a position, and what would have happened instead under Barnett's tenure had she been chosen as president. I guess I'm really focusing on that word radical. What would that have been? What would it have looked like? How would it have manifested? And so that's kind of what I was thinking about.
Roots. Last night's episode includes the scene where Kunta Kinte, first arrived on the plantation, and immediately the other slaves are trying to acclimate him to life on the plantation, lest they get an ass whipping.
Right.
Which was a very real possibility.
Absolutely.
And so one of the relationships established immediately was between Kunta Kinte and the fiddler, who was given the job of, breaking in Kunta Kinte, getting him to accept that his name was Topi. And Fiddler was very upset about being given this assignment because he could see that this African was not going down easily. And he had a certain relationship with the mistress, and he had this musical talent, and he got loaned out or rented out to parties and whatnot, and she kind of liked him, and he had a nice little cushy spot for himself on the plantation, and he knew that if he could not break this new slave, that he was going to be the one to suffer the penalty. And he, in fact, did suffer the penalty. So I say that to say that in addition to being able to forge consensus, which was clearly one of the strengths of Mary McLeod Bethune and not one of the strengths of Ida B. Wells, Mary
Mm-hmm.
also had this ability to be conciliatory toward white people,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that it's hard. I know we haven't seen anything yet um, describing that capacity in Ida B. And it's hard to even imagine it.
Absolutely.
So, in an era when there's all this debate among Black leadership about the way forward, toward integration or separation, um, in an era when the federal government was starting to take a more active role in funding Black organizations, um,
Mm-hmm.
taking over the role of self-help and private philanthropy. Um, I think that the majority of Blacks then and now have always leaned more toward the conciliatory style, and more toward getting whatever personal comforts and pleasures that they can
Hmm.
versus the radicalism of Ida B. Ida B was going to take them over the cliff.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And they weren't on it.
So,
Yeah.
so do you think it's an issue of Blacks accepting capitalism in all its exploitative forms and the ways it manifests? I mean, what role does
I think I think it's a lack of courage.
Mm.
I think it's a lack of courage, and or to spin it more positively, our survival instinct. And I think, now we can see it as an acceptance of capitalism because we have a slightly better opportunity to
Mm-hmm.
participate in capitalism. But we didn't have that opportunity during slavery. What we
Right.
had was an imperative to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So, I carelessly throw around words like courage, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm also very clear that if we had been more courageous, you and I would not be sitting here having this conversation.
Right. Absolutely. Huh.
Entirely possible.
Absolutely.
You know, and so so they were making a strategic decision
Yeah. Hmm.
in a lot of cases.
Wow.
Georgette, what do you think?
Well, I was struck too by that term radical and thinking about what would be radical in that time period, more radical than what they were already doing besides, what could they do? Throw pipe bombs, form a human chain in front of convention halls. But I think that Mary was probably the perfect person because she showed incredible intelligence, emotional, social intelligence, and political intelligence. Because even though she was self-deprecating in a lot of instances, she used that to her advantage because she was always focused on the goal. What is the goal here? And then later in the passages, when it says she was appointed, she was the first civil servant, black first black woman that a civil service position was created for under FDR's administration. She was able to get these people in her little department together and stop going at each other's throats and focus on, you know, what's the purpose for us to be here? You know, are we going to just, well, she probably didn't say this, but this is the impression I got. Are we going to be here and for a finger for them to point and say, well, look, you know, we gave them a chance. You know, they have their little department and what they do with it. But she focused them on a unified front with some policies, because at the end of the day, and I was really surprised to see how many blacks were appointed to his cabinet. And, you know, I'm like, wow, well, why didn't I know about this? And what happened between then and now? You know, progress politically, but, you know, to show this is what we need. We can deal in your world, you know, and be successful at it. This is what we need. If you, you know, ask us the questions, and we'll provide you the answers, and we'll show you how to put it, you know, into effect. But I think, and I'm reflecting on my interactions with the government and civil service, that if you're following, if they give you rules and regulations to follow, you've got to present that request to them in the format that they need it, you know, so they can say yes or no to. So if you presented it to them with all your I's dotted and T's crossed, what reason do they have to deny you when you've met all the requirements? You know, they've given you a way to get something, and then you be there and have not only the answers to their questions, but some more things that they could do. And, you know, with her foresight, she could see down the road, you know, what else we can do in this position. Because she could have very easily just, you know, been, okay, sat on her laurels, okay, I'm the first woman, blah, 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 here, and I'll just sit here and collect a paycheck. But she used that position to go build some other things. She found power in places that people might not have seen a powerful position, and created power and opportunities where somebody else might not have been able to see that or use it. So, was she? Did she have children? Do you know?
She had one, I think.
Yeah, I've heard it, right?
Oh,
Right.
okay, right, that's right. So I'm just wondering if she had been, you know, on another tack, if she had been, you know, a mother with a lot of children, if she would have still had that much time and energy to put her 110% that she put into this movement and in this vision, would she have been that successful? Not saying that children hold you back, but, you know, stuff happens. So maybe that was another reason why she was probably the perfect person for at this time, you know, in the movement to do what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. Georgette, did you have a passage?
I saw a whole lot of stuff in here. I saw a lot of stuff. Wow. I think one, and this is still in the first chapter.
What version are you reading?
Oh boy, I got an old one, so I'm like 1984. Okay.
Oh, okay.
That's my version.
Okay.
But I think the pages are probably very much the same. But this is the going back to the Southern Women's Prevention of Lynching, that group, and their leader, Mrs. Ames, who's from Texas, and how she still, not only did she, oh boy, I'm trying to find the
vote
passage.
against the Wagner Costigan.
Right, vote against that, but her excuse was that her own people in her organization weren't ready for this, you know, to take a political stand. So I'm trying to find the where I underlined it. Oh, she called her they were not ideologically prepared to deal with politics. They were sentimental and inexperienced, and hence ill-suited to sustain political activism. So I thought that was really like, a slap to, in the face to the women who had gotten together to, be behind this movement, a very worthwhile movement. And, still their own leader didn't believe that they were ready to move forward, with this. Because you can't just, stop, after you talk to people about stopping lynching and what it means and how this is let me see what was that spot.
But if you think about that and how white folks have reacted to Obama's presidency.
Yeah.
When I read that, I had to wonder, well, maybe Miss Ames knows her people.
But it was really sad. That was sad. You go so far, but not far enough. And I think there's somewhere else in here where they talked about that they knew that they could not, to be successful, they would have to convince the white men, their husbands. And I guess they didn't feel they could do that.
Yeah.
Right.
So, kind of putting the brakes on the power of femininity there.
Yeah.
You should be able to convince your husband of some things. If you've been able to get all these women together.
Well, that actually is the one example. It was that same. Was it with Ames? Well, I'll talk about it later.
Okay. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that struck me as well. It's just first and foremost the notion of not wanting to anger Southerners, and the attendant backlash, of course, would be this mob violence, and so I was just really struck by as she Ames is kind of that threefold concern that she had, and one was kind of like this notion of technology in order to bring the so-called the Negro into the economy of the so-called New South. However, I'm juxtaposing that with what we know today, that at that time she called, or in the organization had this interest, shall I say, a quasi passive interest, a quasi interest in integrating blacks into this new economy, and then I started thinking about if I could juxtapose, moving forward here, and looking at the 21st century, black workers were still so displaced, and most of the time, last hired, first fired, and the ways in which technology has disrupted those jobs that used to be solid middle-class jobs for especially black male workers. And Georgette, as you noted, there was just not enough interest after all was said and done. I was looking at her the threefold concern, but there was just still not enough interest and true humanization of black people. That if we truly saw them as human, if they had truly seen blacks as human, I don't understand. It was in my opinion, a no-brainer. Why would you not want to advocate and push for federal legislation to outlaw lynching?
Absolutely, you make a great point because she had that threefold plan equating, white women, the white men's views of, why they're,
Mhm.
committing these lynchings as their way of expressing their authority over the white woman and, over blacks.
Black women.
So if
Yeah.
you understood that, then why, okay, this would help you out too, wouldn't it? There's strength in numbers. You help us, we will help you.
Right.
But they were still only. It sounded really good on paper. It was great. They could go around and make speeches. But when it came to the metal hitting the road, the rubber hitting the road,
Right.
she wasn't ready. She wasn't ready to put her foot on the gas that day. So that's
Right.
I totally agree with you. It's very sad. Very sad.
Kim, hey.
And it's
Hi.
Hi,
Kim.
Kim.
Hey.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for being almost at the end of the meeting.
Oh,
Okay.
it's okay.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kim. I'm in New York, and I'm happy to be at the tail end of the meeting, the conversation.
Well, we didn't really get started until about 7 o'clock because Georgette and I were sitting here probably from close to 6:30 trying to figure out what if anybody else was coming and what we were going to do about it.
Right.
So we started late. But anyway, as you know, we're having this different kind of agenda tonight. So we've really only talked about two issues. Nicole brought up a discussion around the differences between the leadership styles of Bethune and Wells Barnett. And Georgette was just talking about the Southern white women and how they failed to support the federal anti-lynching legislation. So that's where we are. I think I am going to. So people have had an option of choosing a passage to start a discussion around, or picking one of those discussion starters that I listed. I think I want to talk for a minute about the work-life balance issue that came up, and Georgette, asked if Mary had children. Um, we know she had at least one,
Mhm.
and I think she had her fairly early because I think it comes up in the first chapter that by the time she arrived in Daytona, or by the time she took over at the Colored Women's National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, she already had the baby.
Yeah.
And we didn't hear about it anymore. So my point is that her child may have been kind of far along by the time she took on all of these leadership roles, because I know by the time we get to the end of the book, it says at the age of 61, she had these three positions as head of the National Council of Negro Women, president of Bethune-Cookman College, and a high position in the Roosevelt Administration with the National Youth Administration. So if she was 61, then she may have, been like in her late 30s, 40s by the time she started taking on these leadership positions. And so her child may have been almost grown by then. That's what I'm guessing. Because she was born in 1875. So let's say she had a child when she was 20. 1895. So by the time she becomes president of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs in 1924, that child could have been grown.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'm doing the math because one of the things that came through rather strongly for me was just how hard she was working on behalf of the Black community. And, you know, and I like that quote that I included above the summary. You know, and one of the things that happens early on is her friends take up a contribution to send her on a vacation because she had not been resting properly. And then at another point, she's writing to some of her fellow women activists, like I think Nanny Helen Burroughs was one of them, saying, you know, it's really just you and me out here, girlfriend. You know? We're killing ourselves.
Yes.
And where's everybody else? You know. And so I don't know, there just were, you know, a lot of kind of things like that came up for me in this chapter. And so to some extent, I feel like, you know, she must have been neglecting something, if only her own health, to do all the things that she was doing. And I don't know, I think young people today have a much better sense of trying to establish a healthy work-life balance. Even though I think it's hard, you know, I think it's hard no matter how you do it. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Did that stuff strike you? Anybody?
Yeah. I answered before, but I mean, it definitely struck me. Because we do have to, you know, the issue of self-care is so very important to these movements and activism and so forth. So the issue of self-care, it was interesting that as much as I've read about Mary McLeod Bethune, I had never, until reading this text, been introduced to that side of her. It's almost like, you know, a romanticizing and playing into that trope of a strong, so-called strong Black woman, the Amazonian trope that we know can be seen as a source of our, you know, where our strength comes from in celebration, but it also boxes us in and is very unrealistic, and it has done damage when we look at, you know, statistics, heart disease, and so forth, blood hypertension with Black women. So we know that, you know, in real time, it does damage as well. And so I can say that I was intrigued, I think would be the right term, by that small sense of privacy there that I was able to have this kind of this foresight into as a result of this text, because it did seem to me like a crying out, you know, I don't want to say a cry for help, but just a notion that she could not, facing a reality that she could not do, they could not do it all. And that, you know, that something was being sacrificed as they placed themselves on the so-called front lines for our people. So I was just impressed that Giddings gave that insight, and it really humanized her. It afforded me the chance to see what I guess I instinctively knew, that, yeah, she had to have those moments, right? But in a text of this magnitude, to not have her romanticized, but kind of showed the other sides of Bethune. So I was absolutely impressed by that.
Thank you. Georgette or Kim, anything on that?
When the letter that she wrote to Charlotte Hawkins Brown, and in it she reads she says, and she's speaking about the death of Mrs. Wilson, and how she says, we all bow in submission to God's will. Every time one of us drops out, it seems to me that it's necessary for us to get closer and closer together. I feel very sad. I cannot write you much just now. I think that passage, when I read it, made me think that she was feeling her mortality. And just despite all of the great achievements and advancements that she had been able to make for the movement, she still felt there was a whole lot more to be done. And wow. And then just to, as you said, Nicole, just humanize this person that we've seen statues of and colleges dedicated to, and not, and I think a lot of times when we read about these people who've done so much and tried to do so much, we kind of idolize them, and we don't think about that personal cost that comes with, sacrificing. And what happened with their family, what happened with her husband and her child, what did they think about this? And a lot of times you don't get that unless you get a chance to read their memoirs or someone writes a biography. Hopefully it's accurate. A lot of them, they don't want to disclose all that personal information because they want to keep that facade, So I think, but the human condition is such that, we're all these things, and yet we keep pressing forward. And I think it makes what she'd done that much more special because, you have to do these things.
Right.
You have to do these things. So she's more than just a name and a title and the first this and, the wearer of these three hats. But this is a woman, and that could be you. That could be your daughter, your granddaughter, your aunt. It's attainable. She wasn't superhuman. She was human. So.
And I think she also had a great sense of responsibility toward the race as a whole. And, she helped to get a lot of people into various positions, but even then it was clear that not everyone had that same sense of feeling of responsibility toward the collective. And so that's a layer of burden that she allowed herself to carry, that everybody just doesn't get. I mean, imagine Clarence Thomas losing a night's sleep over the condition of Black people.
Right. The great defender.
So, Kim,
Yes.
were there any passages that you wanted to lift up, or any of these topics that you want to explore?
I like the just talking about the work-life balance. I agree that there are sacrifices and that there is costs to everything. So I'm definitely understanding that, and I was just thinking about how sometimes when you're running from something and you don't have when you're so driven, and I don't want to take anything away from her. But I know for me that in my family, you know, my mother was very political and very driven. But at the same time, there was this other side of her that it was all politics all the time. There was this side of her that was kind of not there. And I like what Georgette was saying in terms of there's a sadness here. There's just a sadness, and the fact that people had to pull money together for her to go on vacation. It just seems like when she rested her head and she put her head down when there was nothing to leave, who was with her? Who was by her side?
Mm-hmm.
So I like the question, but let's see, FDR. I think that's it for me for now. I'm kind of out of it. Forgive me, but
Okay.
I'm just kind of zoned.
You know,
Does anybody else have something they want to explore?
yeah, I was thinking of what Kim brings up. Also, if we're engaging the work-life balance issue, it is so interesting to read that the reciprocal positioning of Black men workers and Black women workers. So, as Giddings noted, and I know and Bethune, as Bethune engaged, is that Black women had to overcompensate as Black men were unemployed. And so, of course, we still see that as an issue. I think I wanted to ask you all. So remember in the passage where she discusses that, and so in a component of this compensating for the lack of Black men employment, that some of these women, you know, they were kind of talked about kind of this slave labor where these domestic workers would go out and here's an opportunity for white working class women to derive pleasure from having these Black women in their homes as their domestic workers, because prior to the Depression, working class white women were not able to afford this kind of assistance, right? And so, but she indicated that these Black women were sometimes not paid what they were promised, and sometimes there was a sexual exploitation. Yeah. So I'm wondering, when we talk about the work-life balance issue, can we talk about, or do we discuss enough, the plight of sex workers, and more specifically Black female sex workers? I'm wondering about that story that is kind of alluded to here, but not necessarily. I just thought Giddings could go into, well, and of course I know this was about Bethune, my shero, but I definitely wanted more of that, the Black sex worker account.
Well, she must have been so subtle with that, I didn't even see it.
Oh, yeah.
Where was that?
Sometimes she talks about the sex worker, and she said sometimes that these women were performing these, the sexual labor. And so I'm just, and in general, I was just wanting to ask, which may be more of a find the feminism, but I just wanted to ask, do you all think we discuss that enough, or that there's an advocacy around the Black woman as sex worker, and is, and
well, I don't think we discuss anything enough. I mean, this is the day that I've been in conversations about the remake of Roots. And as I was saying earlier, I've come across a lot of people, a frighteningly high number of people, that have been saying things like, we don't need to know this history, it's too painful, white people are just trying to make us feel bad by rehashing all of this ugliness. And so in one conversation I was saying, okay, you know, if that's how we feel about slavery. But my concern is I don't think there's anything that we're comfortable talking about. We don't want to hear if somebody's been sexually abused. We don't want to hear if somebody's homeless and impoverished. We don't want to hear if somebody's got aches and pains.
Yeah.
You know, we just don't want to hear it, any of it. Um, Meanwhile, all of these problems persist and are exacerbated by our denial and deaf ears. So no, I don't think we talk about the situation of sex workers nearly enough.
What do you think it stems from? The fact that there are these cultural spaces of silence. What is it rooted in? Where does it come from? I mean, I know that's a loaded
I
question.
think some of, well, I do. I think some of it, I used to think it was a cultural issue, but I'm more inclined these days to just think it's a human issue. That
Mhm.
I think that for a lot of us, when we hear about someone else's pain or hard luck story or hard way to go, it leaves us feeling helpless and inadequate. Um, and we think to ourselves, I could listen to this story, I could have a V8.
Right, right, right.
And, you know, and we choose the V8. I mean, I think we just feel helpless. And in a lot of ways, we are truly helpless. But I don't think we're truly as helpless as we tell ourselves we are.
Hmm.
And see, I think on a spiritual level that we are supposed to allow ourselves to feel that pain
Mhm.
because pain is an indicator that something needs to be done and
Mhm.
that we are supposed to listen to that message. And so if we cut our finger and it's bleeding profusely, you know, it does not make sense to say I'm going to go get a V8 and just ignore my bleeding finger. The
Right.
finger is saying, do something about me, and do something about me right now.
Uh-huh.
And so we don't want to hear it because we don't want to take any personal ownership of having to respond, you know, in some kind of human way.
Would taking personal ownership um, be a form of, and perhaps maybe a passive form of, kind of, you know, being in community with this person, seeing this person as a part of one's community? Um,
Yeah,
is that?
absolutely. Well, I mean, I think there are, you know, multiple ways um, of responding, you know, to every situation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but those ways, you know, are specific to a situation. So, sex workers, for example, um, you know, I mean, a part of it, if I were talking to a woman who was telling me that she was a sex worker, um, my assumption would be that she really felt this was her only option. Now that may not be the case, and I would want to test my assumption with her. But that's what I would be assuming, that she thinks that this is her only option. And so if that turned out to be true, um, you know, and if I felt that I could help direct her toward something else, um, then I would do that. If I couldn't, then I can't. But if I can, I would. And that to me is what we avoid. We avoid doing what we can. So now if she said, you know, I'm a sex worker because I love sex and it's fun, then you're not describing a problem
Mm-hmm.
to me. And so, and there are some women that feel like that from
Right.
what I have seen. So I think that, you know, I think that we have to hear what a particular individual is saying to be led in how to respond appropriately, compassionately, you know, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, that was interesting. You brought up an interesting point, how the terminology we use for these people, because when you say, well, when it said sexual services as well in this passage, I'm thinking, okay, it's a return to the use of the woman's body,
Mm-hmm.
you know, against her will or because this is what she needs. But when you say use the term sex worker, this sounds like, even though it may not be the case, a person who is choosing to work in this industry because this is where her ability is, or you know how her life path has brought her to. This is where she can work to do these things to survive,
Right.
as opposed to something else. But but I'm thinking sex trade, and I'm thinking missing and abducted women, children, and boys.
Oh, okay.
When you say trafficking and human slavery, and I'm not in other countries where the sex trade work or the sex worker has some rights and some protections, then that sounds like a legitimate employment opportunity. But I think in most of the countries in the world, United States included, they're treated as low-class citizens, the dregs. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
police abuse them. They can't report being abused because of our social attitudes about what they do or are being forced to do. And there just aren't that enough protections for them. You know, we have our Judeo-Christian and Muslim, Islamic, you know, attitudes towards this sexual freedom, you know, but it's still controlled by, it's still a male-dominated industry, you know. So until, you know, you have women freely purchasing sexual favors of men, then it's not really, is it really a legitimate, and I can't find another term for it, other than a wholly developed employment opportunity, because it never will be, because the sex industry is still driven by what males want, their desires, you know, how the sexual object is going to look. It's what is their vision of what's desirable from one spectrum to the other.
I have seen back when I had HBO, which was quite a long while ago, shows about women pimps.
Okay.
Have you ever seen that?
No.
Women, what? I'm sorry?
Women pimps.
They were called madams. They would run the
Well, they were
hall.
going. You ever see that show? It might be HBO. It might have been Showtime or something. It was a Pimps Up, Hoes Down, I think.
Okay.
Oh dear.
That sounds like a Snoop Dogg documentary.
Yeah, obviously. Yes. But I tell you, I was shocked. So I just tell you, but apparently, Georgette, they have conventions, pimp conventions, and a whole big deal about it. But apparently women are, and I'm not trying to pass a judgment one way or the other, but apparently women are breaking into this field of business, and they had women in their stable.
Right.
What came to mind when you asked the question is there's a lens of time that maybe there's a progression, but when you look back, 40, 50, 60, 70 years, it was a different scene, and there's this very thin line for me, it's just me personally, between black women and sex workers. And I mean that to say that there were very, very few protections for black women.
Right.
Very few. So there was no one ever indicted for raping a black woman. And so when you look at the Hottentot Venus and how they dismembered her body and parts of it were sold and put on display, it just seems like to me, when you are working in somebody's kitchen and the husband comes home and he's taking advantage of you and you need that job, all of a sudden the lines start getting real blurry in terms of who's the sex worker and who's not the sex worker. There were just so many things that we had to do to keep the peace, keep the dinner on the table. There were so few choices, and then for somebody to be put under that amount of pressure and then say, well, if I'm going to do this, I might as well go down to Madame Chi-Chi's, and just lay up with different men and be paid for it because the lines aren't as blurred. So I always feel for us as sisters when we start making distinctions in terms of who's a sex worker and who's not, because we've been put into some situations that are just very, very horrific. So I don't know. I love the question. It just got me percolating and thinking. And then when I look at it today, I can see it through a different lens. I mean, with college girls saying, "Oh, I stripped my way through college. Oh, I did this. I can make more than night." Well, I don't know. I wonder about your emotional and your mental health. I do. I just go, yeah, how much of that can you do? But I don't know. I like the question. I like the question because when you look at so much, first we were breeders, right? And so at that point, nobody was paying us, but we still had to do whatever we had to do to stay alive. So I just think that there's this thin line in my mind, and it just seems like the black woman's body is the thing that it should be a book that we should write about our body. When and where and how we allow people to touch it and when and for what reasons and what are our gains.
Yeah.
Especially these young women, because when we start talking about Beyonce, all of a sudden the generational gap in our little group went crazy.
Well, that leads me into find the feminism, and as you were talking, Kim, it was reminding me of this passage, and since Randy's not here, I'm gonna bring it up.
Okay.
It says, every aspect of Bethune's philosophy of leadership came into play when she acted as advocate for black women. She articulated her faith in them with a passion that no other black woman leader has expressed since. She was adamant about the unheralded achievements of women, always encouraging them to go to the front and take our rightful place, fight our battles, and claim our victories. And when I read that, the thought that went through my head was, and she managed to do it without swinging her panties around.
Well.
But as y'all know, I'm no great lover of Beyonce, but I do think this go to the front and take our rightful place, fight our battles and claim our victories is the spirit that she evokes in Black women.
Yes.
And she does it her way, and it's not Mary McLeod's way, and it's not my way, but but I do get some of that from some of her music.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I would also just briefly add that I also think we have to contextualize the role of pleasure here when we're speaking of Beyonce, because and the generation gap, because I strongly feel like that there's a generation of women who feel that sex is not solely for male consumption, and that women deserve to be pleased, and really her pleasure needs to be first and foremost when we think about Beyonce. When you listen to her lyrics, when you're attempting to, if you will, deconstruct her lyrics. But yeah, it's really this, her advocating for her pleasure, and that we are in a generation where we're seeking this pleasure. I don't know what my mom was doing, but I can definitely tell you that I want to be pleased.
They were having the sexual revolution in the 1960s.
Right, but with mass media supporting it the way mass media support us today, and I think that's an integral component.
No, they absolutely were not.
Right.
They absolutely were not. But my point is that women were learning how to verbalize their own need for sexual pleasure, and to act upon that need. Whereas I don't know if they really did much of that prior to the 1960s. It's certainly not in the more open way that it was during the sexual revolution. So I was a teenager during the 1970s, which I think means that Kim and Georgette were too. So we're really post sexual liberation era. So my point is that the idea of women embracing their sexuality is not offensive or scary or unheard of to any of us in this space. When we are critical of Beyonce's sexuality, there's something different going on than just a discomfort with sexuality. And I think for me, it has more to do with knowing this long history, knowing this history from breeder to rape victim, to on and on, to look up and now see that our only access to power is to take off our clothes and shake our ass around on TV and get a lot of white people to spend money on. It doesn't feel good to me. I mean, I understand that that's not, that's not how other people are seeing it. But I'm saying for me that I am seeing the trajectory, the history, and it doesn't feel like a positive development to me. It feels like backtracking. It feels like the Hottentot Venus, Sarah Bartman, who was forced into prostitution, but when she had the opportunity to go to court and talk about it, she said she was there because she wanted to be there. She had white women hiding her ass at the clubs because it was a fun thing to do. But when she had an opportunity to go to court, she said, I'm here, I'm doing this because I want to do this. So Did she really want to do it?
No.
Did she really want to do it? And so to now be in an era where what we say is, well, yeah, I want to do this. This is free will, and I'm getting paid good. Well, Sarah was getting paid good too, So I don't.
Well,
Kim and Georgette, you could help me out.
We're waiting for an end. We're just waiting for a second to get in.
Well, I saw it as, the ways in which in our movements where we fiddle with rhetoric, and allowing that to kind of change the public discourse, like in feminism, where you take the term bitch, and then you take supposedly the agency from that person who means it for harm. And so I don't
believe that because you put an A on nigga,
right,
that you have claimed the power.
Right. Well, I
see the plantation scene on Roots with white people calling everybody nigga.
Right.
And people being highly offended by it for decades.
Right.
And then we get to a point where we say, well, as long as we say it, we claiming the power. What I see is the white man has won.
Yep.
He has convinced us.
Right. I can see that.
Did you watch Roots last night? Did you see Kunta Kinte take that ass whooping? Because you are not going to call me whatever you want to call me. No, right. I am not Toby. I am Kunta Kinte. I ain't your bitch. I ain't your nigga.
Yeah.
And so here we are in 2016 saying, well, it's powerful to call ourselves bitches, hoes, and niggas. Really?
Really?
Well, it's happening. I don't think it's and I think that's one of the schisms when we, many schisms when we start talking about feminism and femininity and separating the two, if we could, because I see that I see agency with Beyonce, and when she presents herself in a provocative fashion and she's letting the world know this is about my pleasure as well, that no one has the right to deny me of my sexual pleasure, that I'm a sexual being, I'm a woman, and I want to be fulfilled. But I will admit that I think a critical component of this is we have to real and have the conversation about the fact that she's not trying to separate herself from capitalism. And so, yeah, it sells and she makes money and her brand grows and I don't know, I can't speak to her empowerment, but I do know that she seems to present with agency, whether we like it or not. I mean, I don't know where I stand. Most of the time I'm with you, Michelle. I don't want to be called a bitch. Most of the time I don't use the word nigger. I have had moments, Lord help me. I relapse sometimes. Sometimes I relapse, Lord help me. But I don't want to use it, but then too, I've started, kind of monitoring when I'm really pissed off if I use the word bitch. Am I referencing women more? And unfortunately, I have to admit I am, and so and I know it's work, and you got to figure out your politics. I think that's what's at the core of this. It's that this umbrella of feminism is so large that when my question about the sex workers, Edith, we've got to figure out our politics. Honestly, I saw Malcolm X handle the black woman sex worker better in his text than I've been seeing black women handle her in their text. Malcolm X, in the autobiography of Malcolm X, he humanizes the black sex worker. And I was like, whoa, that was such a critical space to me that I'm going to have to go back and try to look at that and examine it again. Why? How is he able to humanize the black woman sex worker? I'm not certain. But anyway, I'm just grateful you all engaged me, because I'm just looking. These are beautiful arguments you put forth, and just discussing this, it's just made my night.
Let's see if Kim or Georgette have any final thoughts for us. Anybody?
I have. It's hard to get in with you two. I'm sorry, it's just hard to get in. I just wanted to just talk a little bit about, yes, this is your body, and yes, you're so proud that you are a sexual being. So what? Why does the whole world now need to know that you had an orgasm? I don't understand that. The babies got to know it. The kids in kindergarten got to know it. Everybody got to know it. And then at the end of the day, there's a lot outside your door of men who want nothing from you but your sex. They don't have to father a child with you and protect that child. They don't have to protect you. They don't have those tiny little threads that build an African American community, because everything is about your orgasm. I just feel sometimes like, go sit down. And for all of a sudden you to be humping and grinding and then bring up pictures of King and this and that. And it's not just Beyonce. I'm gonna get off Beyonce because I know, I don't want to offend people. It just seems like we need to watch the money. Yeah. We need to watch the money, so that when our young men are in videos where they're calling us dogs and they have guns and they're talking about how to kill each other, it's all about the money. Destroying our image destroys us, especially at that level of adolescents, children. Mm-hmm. So I find this something that I just do not forgive, that you selling us out, you pimping us out. You should be on that show that Michelle was watching about who the pimps and the hoes are, because at the end of the day, it's these little beautiful little children who grow up and they just say, oh, watch me twerk. Get the hell out of here. Open a book. Open a book. Look at what's going on in this country. And you need to tell me about your orgasm? Get out of here. Right. Take that in your room and do it as much as you want to do. But that's not something that we as a people need to define womanhood as that. What other qualities are about womanhood that these young singers are espousing?
Well, now,
the ones that sell well. I mean, the ones that sell well, the Rihannas and the Nicki Minaj's. Everything is about their little pussies. I'm sorry.
That's true.
But
there is a strand of economic independence. So, you can say, like when Beyonce brags and say, shit goes down when it's $1 billion on an elevator. There's some agency when she's saying, of course, the tension, she and Jay-Z on the elevator and the whole fight incident. But there's some agency to say, shit goes down when it's $1 billion on an elevator, knowing that she's half of that $1 billion that she's referencing. So I think, you're right, Kim. That's a critical discussion. The ways in which...
Where's the $1 billion elevator ride for somebody who's going to help our children navigate and build their self-worth? I saw something on the news tonight where our boys were having this contest where they light themselves with alcohol and burn themselves just to get some attention. And it's all over the internet now. And when they were showing the faces of these kids who were doing it, they were predominantly African-American males. We are in a crisis. We are in a crisis. And nobody's saying to these kids, we love you, you need to be honored, you need to be protected. And yes, you are a sexual being, and we hope for God that you enjoy your sexual body, but that can't be the message. It just can't be the message. I don't think that we're sitting here as prudes. I don't think that that's what's being said.
And that along that same line, Kim, you know, when we were younger, and there was so many of the young people were aspiring to be the next great basketball player or sports star or the next great singer, because that was the way out of the hood. That was the way you were going to make a lot of money and you know, be successful. It was clear to me then that not everybody, you know, was going to be able to go that route. It's clear to me now. Not everybody is going to be the next Beyonce,
Right.
the next Oprah, the next whatever. And so, you know, in terms of what Kim is saying, where is it in the public sphere that our children are hearing about viable options? And, you know, obviously it's not the job of capitalism to promote those messages, but do we really need to be supporting those people that are holding out these images that are just...
Well,
I want Georgette to say something. Georgette.
Well, what I'm
down.
thinking of,
Okay.
when you started the conversation with Beyonce, I was thinking about an article.
You mean when I was being a troublemaker?
Well, yes. I was thinking about how, you know, how much more exposure she has than this article I discovered in, I don't remember if it was Essence or Ebony, one of them, that had all of the black female appointees in President Obama's cabinet that I had never seen before, not heard of, only Valerie Jarrett, but all these other women, young women, old women, in between, and here they were, you know, sitting beautifully, the head of some department or involved in some, you know, initiative.
I saw that picture today.
Did you? Okay. I'm glad it's still going around.
Yeah, I've seen it a long time, not maybe like a year or so ago, but I saw it today.
Okay. And where is that on the news? That's nowhere. You know,
Right.
So it's about exposure and what they allow to be everyone to be exposed to.
Right.
And that's where the power comes into. Now, whether or not Beyonce or any other of these pop stars have the power as we want to define power, the reality is who has the ability to pull the plug on them once they decide they're no longer useful. Okay, can Beyonce or Rihanna or Nicki Minaj or any of these other guys on the other side spectrum, can they create a television station or a satellite venue for themselves to get what they sell to their audience? No. You see what happened to Bill? Was it Michael? Who was it that was trying to buy a television station?
Bill Cosby.
Bill Cosby, and he lost his son over that. So, you know, there's still some realities in this capitalistic system that, you know, we have to realize, and that's the path that they show us is the way to power. That's not where the power really is. And so as long as we keep getting distracted by who's shaking their butt and, you know, and drinking out of titanium straws, then we don't get to celebrate all those black women in that photograph. And grow up a new group of young black women and celebrate, you know, a little girl who has a lemonade business that's making lots of money, and encourage that kind of financial intelligence in our young people, wherever they may be. you know, whatever race, you know, whatever situation they're in. Encourage that. Think, create your own business, you know, think outside the box, move outside of the system so that whoever has the ability to pull the plug on you has less reach, has less fingers on that plug, you know, you have your own source, a sideline to ensure that you reach whatever that vision you have for yourself being successful is. And so, you know, whatever influence people in the entertainment industry have over our young people today, if we still instill in them, you know, the ability, okay, that's wonderful over there, you know, but what are you going to do with your life? Okay, and then what are you going to teach your children to do? Do you have property? Do you own? You know, what about creating a financial system in your school? You know, teaching the rest of your classmates about how money works. You know, little things like that to give them empowerment. Yeah. Instead of just dumping them out into the system. Oh, now I have to work at McDonald's and compete with this new automated cash register that I'm not smart enough to handle. You know,
until they end up in prison, you know, as another one of capitalism's victims.
Right.
Do you think don't you think that our children they've already ascertained that technology is a double-edged sword, that yes, technology in many ways has connected people, this global connection, but that technology also has displaced workers. I honestly think that, you know, maybe some of them cannot articulate that, but the children understand that this economy is vicious, that if you're Black, that there are some issues with employment, that and I also think we have to kind of reconcile celebrity culture. I do believe the distraction. However, some of these people are outliers, because when we talk about the entrepreneurship, well, Beyonce, you know, the Darien line of clothing, and now Ivy Park Sportswear, and you know, and other. She's no longer. So, from my understanding, she's no longer with Columbia. She's releasing her music as she pleases now. So there's this. She's cut out that middleman. But of course, let's just be honest. Beyonce is an outlier, as you said. There's just, you know, I don't know. There's just a mass appeal. There's just, this is rare for someone to just kind of consistently be on top and at the top of the game. As
well, a mass appeal or a conspiracy theory, an agenda. And, you know, I mean, as Kim said, follow the money. But what I mean by that is certain people are allowed to attain certain positions for a reason. Yep. And so follow the money, but also try to understand what is that reason. You know, one of the things about this chapter, and I don't want to keep us here all night, but one of the things about this chapter was, you know, Mary McLeod Bethune felt very strongly that if Blacks could have more visibility on a national level, that, you know, that would somehow translate into better policy. That if white people could just get to know us, you know, and just get to see how much we've accomplished, that they would see our humanity, you know, and they would want to do right. And so, okay, you can understand now. You can understand now in 1930s, you know, that's what Black people could think. But at this point, what we know is they know us.
Yeah.
You know, they know that we're smart. They know that we're capable. They know that we're hardworking. They know that all of the ways in which they have stereotyped us are bullshit. They know that. But it's not stopping our children from being killed in the streets.
Right.
You know, it's not stopping our children from being tracked into prisons.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not helping any more of us to find employment. So we know, we don't have to wonder anymore. We know that visibility alone does not lead to better outcomes. But in the
Right.
case of entertainment, you have all of this visibility, but there's this theme, there's this consistent theme that runs through so much of it. So what is that about? You know, that's what I want us to be able to think about as a people. What is it about? Because you know, just like going back to what you brought up in the beginning, Nicole, about the difference between Mary McLeod Bethune and Ida Wells Barnett.
Uh-huh.
Um, Certain people have certain things that allow them to reach a certain position with or without a conspiracy. So if we were looking at Beyonce, then what are the qualities? You know, what are the characteristics that allow, like when I was younger, you take a person like Oprah,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm wishy-washy about Oprah. Sometimes I like her, sometimes I don't. But one of the times that I didn't like her was when she put on these like blue or green eyeballs. Y'all remember that?
Yeah, contact.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Which
Wow. I
I
don't
thought
know.
just said a lot about what's going on in her head.
Hmm.
And whatever that is that's going on in her head is what allows her to be in the position that she was in and get the opportunities that she got, that Ida B. Wells couldn't have got, that Logan Michelle couldn't have got.
Yeah. That makes sense. Well, but look at how Bethune kind of flips the script. Reminds me of Martin Delaney when she speaks of herself as like this pure blood. Um, did you all see that in the text?
yes, she's very proud of her African ancestry.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what if, what if we were having more greater conversation around that? This notion, I don't know how controversial, but still, but yeah, that's a Michelle. I would agree. That's a good.
And there's also, the theme that ran through this, which runs through our lives as African Americans, is the question of integration versus separation. And so depending on where you fall, or as you would say, Nicole, what your politics are, depending on where you fall on that question, is also going to shape the kinds of things that you pursue and are able to accomplish.
Right. I agree.
Yeah. So let's break. Let's not try to do the future moderators just yet, since half of us are missing. I really don't know that it's going to get much better than this. Randy now has a part-time job or something for this. I don't know if it's for the summer or not, but I don't know. But let's see who's here next week and maybe try to do that then.
Okay.
All
right.
All right, everybody. Have a good night.
All right. Bye, ladies.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good night.
Don't worry.